is Business Research Methods and Project Work Course tutorial. This is tutorial 3.2. The topic is item writing. The learning objectives are to learn the process of item writing and to understand different types of item. Now, these two are questions presented to you and you need to post the answers in my Google Classroom in the comment section. The first question is, an item where the response options are specified is termed as close-ended questions. State true or false. The second question is, a question within a question is called a dash question. So you need to fill in the blanks. So let's begin with research instrument. So we have discussed about research instrument a number of times, and you know that a research instrument is that which is used for collecting data. Now, in quantitative research, the researcher use various research instruments to collect numeric data and also non-numeric or categorical data, or you can say qualitative data. These instruments are, say, taste, scale, questionnaire, checklist, and inventory. The most common tool is questionnaire or SIDL. Irrespective of the type of research, researchers need to construct, develop, adopt some questions or items for data collection, and this requires item writing. So this is the topic I am going to discuss. Now, you know, a questionnaire, which is a instrument or which is a tool for data collection, there is nothing but a set of questions. Similarly, in SIDL there is also set of questions, but the difference is that in a questionnaire the responses are recorded by respondents themselves. In case of SIDL, the enumerator or the investigator listen to the respondent and record the responses. And because of this difference, in a questionnaire, the item or the questions that are presented need to be framed or constructed very carefully. The questions should be understandable for the respondent. But in case of a SIDL, though it applies, but the opportunity is that here the investigator can explain the question to the respondent, and therefore in SIDL there may be a little bit of technicalities also. Means the language that may be sophisticated or that may be technical language for the investigator. But in questionnaire, generally ordinary words or ordinary language or common language should be used so that it is understandable for the respondent. Now, though there is no specific guidelines for construction of the instrument and the questions to be asked to respondents, a beginner may adopt the following procedure. So let's discuss the procedure for item writing, or in better you can say writing the questions in a questionnaire or a SIDL. Step 1. Clearly define and individually list all specific objectives, research questions or hypotheses, if any, to be tested. Step 2. For each objective, research question or hypothesis, list all associated questions that the researcher wants to answer through the study. In step 3, take each question that the researcher identified in step 2, it means the research questions, and list the information required to answer it. Then after that, formulate questions or write the items that the researcher wants to ask respondents or know the subject to obtain the required information. So, item writing, that is a logical process which begins in clear definition of the problem or clear identification of the problem, then setting the objective, framing the research question, and after that determine whatever the information required to answer those research questions, and based on that, the questions or the items need to be framed or constructed. Now, while formulating the questions, the researcher may adopt any one or combination of the following instrument. Now, the instruments are, say, taste, scale, questionnaire, checklist, inventory, and there are many other. Now, let's discuss this instrument. Taste is an instrument which uses correct or incorrect response category. For example, the researcher may take financial literacy test. Now, to take financial literacy test, the researcher may ask various knowledge-based questions, that knowledge component regarding financial knowledge. And in the responses, there will be one correct response and some other incorrect responses, and that will be asked to the respondent to choose the correct response. So that is called taste. Now there may be say mathematical ability test, there may be English literacy test. So it is basically to test the knowledge of respondent. Then scale. This is a research instrument where the response category is dependent on a specific scaling technique. For example, 5-point Likert scale. Now, there are various situations where, response cannot be sought as correct or incorrect. Say, you try to understand the perception or attitude of persons towards a particular thing or towards a situation, towards a case. So in that time, to understand their perception or to measure their perception, to measure their attitude, scale need to be used. So I will explain in detail with example in my another tutorial. Questionnaire is a research instrument for collecting responses to questions in various forms, which may include open-ended questions, closed-ended questions, filter questions, taste, scale, etc. Then checklist. Checklist is a form of instrument where the indicators are listed and the respondents are to check those indicators which are applicable to them. Now, see, in case of checklist, already there are some indicators that are mentioned. Now, in example, it is given child behavior checklist. Now, those researcher, whoever is conducting a research to understand child behavior, so they can check that checklist or they can see what are the indicators mentioned in the checklist, whether those indicators are covered in the questionnaire the researcher has developed. So whether those indicators are covered or not, so that can be checked with the help of the checklist. So that is called a checklist. So in checklist already the indicators are available and it reduces the work of the researcher for framing the items or constructing the questions. Similarly, there is inventory. Now, inventory, it is a complete or exhaustive list of indicators in the form of a scale or questionnaire. Now, as you know, inventory, the meaning is stock. So it is a standardized, questionnaire which contains number of questions. Means there are exhaustive list of indicators, and the researcher or a beginner in research, they can check the inventory and take the help of those indicators or the questions which are already available in the inventory and use in the questionnaire developed by the researcher. So that is called inventory. Now let's talk about item writing. So how to frame questions or how to write the items. And generally when we say questions are always in interrogative form. But in questionnaire, you will find that all questions or all items, those are not in interrogative form. Those are not necessary to be in interrogative form. As I already discussed about scale, say you want to understand perception, or you want to measure attitude, that times it may not be required to ask their attitude in interrogative form. Rather, a scale may be developed and ask them to rate their attitude or perception, and therefore we are using the term item rather than question. So item writing. Now item, that is the basic unit of a research instrument. The various types of item are, say, open-ended item, or you can say open-ended question. Those where respondents are not constrained to a pre-specified set of responses, that is called open-ended question or open-ended item. It means the response categories are not stated in the question. For example, the question stated in the questionnaire is, how old are you? So here, as a respondent, you need to mention your age. That's it. Then say what brand of hair shampoo you prefer. So whatever the shampoo brand you prefer, that you need to state in the response. So this is called open-ended item or open-ended question. Now, in contrast to open-ended question, in close-ended question, the response categories are already stated in the questionnaire. The respondent, they only need to choose the category which best fit the respondent. For example, in the earlier example we are taking, there the question was, how old are you? Now say the same aspect or the same variable can be, the data can be collected in a different way in close-ended item. Here, say tick the age group which you are in, and the age group are given 18 to 25 years, 26 to 35 years, 36 to 45 years. So these groups are given, and if respondents fall in any of these three categories, then the respondent need to choose the one which best fit the respondent. So this is called close-ended item. When deciding whether to use open-ended or closed-ended questions to obtain information about a variable, the researcher needs to visualize how he or she is planning to use the information generated. This is important as because the way questions are framed determines the unit of measurement which could be used to classify the response. Say, in the example of age in above two types of item, the information generated from open-ended question can be measured in ratio scale, whereas in the close-ended type, responses are in ordinal scale or categorical scale. The statistical treatment also varies according to the type of data. As a rule, closed questions are useful for eliciting factual information and open-ended questions for seeking opinions, attitudes, and perception. The choice of open-ended or closed-ended questions should be made according to the purpose for which a piece of information is to be used, the type of study population, the proposed format for communicating the findings, and the socioeconomic background of the readership. Well, students, I am continuing this video tutorial in another